Hey, it's Michael Angelo Caruso. I'm with Cady Coleman today. Hi, Cady.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for being with me. This is the Talk to Me podcast, everybody. And of course, if you like what you're seeing, it's available on the my YouTube channel, michaelangelocaruso.com. I have a special guest today. She is an Air Force colonel. I think that's still true, yes?
It's always true.
It's always true forever.
It's always, you're
She is
always
a
right.
chemist. I didn't know this. She is an engineer. And she was in space for 100 and was it 159 days?
At one time. Yep. Almost 6 months up on the space station. And then two shuttle missions, which were short but important, things to do first.
Now retired from NASA. She's a terrific keynote speaker. We met when we both spoke at an event in San Diego for an association. I really enjoyed your talk. I found you refreshing. I've heard a few astronauts speak in my lifetime, and I thought you were the most human. You were relatable. I loved how you converted lessons learned in space to lessons we should be learning on Earth. And in fact, there's a lesson, implied lesson in the title of your book, which is sharing space.
Oh, shall I show you the book?
Yeah, why not? In
Well,
case
it's still pretty
people think
new.
it doesn't actually exist, there it is. It's a book.
Well, and actually, I wanted when you talked about being a good speaker and sharing a lot of things, I had a job that didn't quite only belong to me, and that I worked for the government. And I had the privilege of being an astronaut in the space program. And so the things that you learned, the things that you did, in some ways they belong to everybody. And I felt compelled to share them. So of course, sharing space. But I actually designed the book cover with a cover artist. And the purpose was that even if people didn't buy the book, although I think you should, of course, but that they would see the cover and they would see, I don't know if you can see my sort of big space hair there. And they would realize like, whoa, who is that? And realize that's a person who's like doing something really different. And it's a woman. And
Yes.
even growing my hair on my for my space station mission was part of my kind of like campaign to just kind of have these little subliminal messages everywhere. Like I'd be in the back of a picture with the hair.
Oh,
And
that's interesting.
and it
Oh, you
kind of
grew your hair on purpose because it would show well and it would represent females in space, this kind of a thing.
it's so important. Even, I mean, you might think that we've come so far as people that everyone can recognize everyone and appreciate them, but it's work to do that. And we're still further behind, especially when it comes to women and people who are underrepresented.
What percentage of NASA are women?
Oh, I don't know that number, but it is greater than, well, okay. I used to say, I mean, when I joined NASA, they picked they had 24 people and three of us were women. Okay. That was back in 1992. And the last couple classes have been 50% women, if not close to 50%, right? And so and the astronaut office is smaller now. And so the astronaut office, when I was there, was about, I don't know, less than 20% women.
Yeah.
And now it is 40%. It kind of depends, now there are fewer people, but
Yeah.
um and it's a different way that decisions get made. I mean, I'll just maybe skip ahead to something that's really important to me, which is at a certain point during my career, they eliminated the small sized spacesuit, which affected more than a third of the women that were there.
Why did they eliminate the small size spacesuit?
Um, Well, I'll say logistics, money. It's more expensive to have more sizes of spacesuits. They eliminated the extra large as well.
I never thought of that. It's a form of merchandise. I mean, it's an extra SKU or
Well,
something.
it is, but and then those arguments are really important in terms of logistics and what fits, and they're physically different sizes of like the actual metal ring that's gonna, the top and the bottom are gonna seal together, and it's like when you put like a plastic egg together or something, and so it has to be the right diameter. So now suddenly these things are big on the space station, and the space station is actually huge, but it's never big enough for all the stuff that you need to have in it to.
Isn't that just a female problem? You got your hair looking just the way you wanted in space, but your outfit didn't fit.
Hey, I am not going, okay, I'm gonna, because we're friends, you get to say that, okay? But, here's the deal, is it wasn't just, I mean, so this was 8 of the women or so. And what happened was if you were not, if you were not qualified in the in the spacesuit, you could not go and live and work on the space station.
Wow.
So it wasn't just like, hey, we'll have you do robotics or this or that. You couldn't go. So I know it's, funny to talk about it like it's an outfit, but I mean, this is your equipment and we're friends and we make these kind of jokes together, you and I, but it's a serious thing in that you can't do your job. And so the way we were going to the space station back then, there would be 3 people in a capsule going up, and you need 2 spacewalkers and a backup. So everybody had to be spacewalk qualified. And if you weren't, well, basically you had to wait until we had a capsule that had more seats. So you could have 2 spacewalkers backup and the person who isn't qualified for spacewalking. And if I had had to wait, I did end up qualifying in that spacesuit with a lot of hard work and people's help. But I did qualify. And if I hadn't qualified, I would have waited at least 11 years to
Wow.
go and live and work on a space station.
Wow.
And think of, I mean, we all bring something different. You mentioned that I give, different kinds of speeches. Well, we're all, as astronauts, we're all different. And there was a stereotype, but that stereotype changes, but it only changes when people get to work together and appreciate each other. One of the guys, I won't say who it is, but he said, Katie, you speak differently than, I mean, I know you're military, you're a chemist in the Air Force, but you weren't a pilot in the Air Force. And so this kind of operational, quick, copy, Roger, that is not always your style when we're just talking. In the airplane, you're great at it, but you take that hat off and you're yourself. And I find myself thinking, wait a minute, I don't know what she's talking about. And then and this is what I love. And then he said, I realize I have to ask you to say it again because whatever you're saying, it'll turn out to be important and nobody else is saying it.
Interesting.
And so I think it's that things are changing in terms of who we think the people are that do things that matter to us, not just in space. I use being an astronaut as an example, but
Yeah. Let's explore this another second. Do you have to be an engineer to be an astronaut?
you do not. You do have to have it was a technical bachelor's and now a technical master's degree, something in a technical
Yeah,
field.
that's what I thought. Okay, so if you look at the numbers of engineers or even technical people, look at the number of men to women, the ratio in IT, it's still very skewed to men for some reason. I'm not saying it's right, I'm saying it's a fact. What can we do to get those numbers more equitable? Do you think women might be shut out of this early on in life, or do you think maybe that they're not as interested? Is that possible?
I think we need a lot of people to put their, thinking caps on and bring their creative solutions. And one of the aspects of, who are the people that become, let's say, computer scientists. And to stereotype here, a lot of times women like to be they like to have missions. They like to solve problems, but to make a difference. And
Yeah,
as opposed to, I wonder how this thing works as a jigsaw puzzle in a mission, they want to make that thing work because somebody needs it.
right.
And Harvey Mudd is a really interesting college, and they started teaching the freshman classes in a more mission-oriented way.
Yeah.
And they increased enrollment in computer science and other engineering kinds of in science things by some huge number.
Hmm.
And so it has to do with how we talk to people about who they are and what we need. And so, in a small example, when somebody brings over, their little kid to our house and they're a, cute little girl wearing something really cool, it's always all I can do not to say, "Oh, I love your space outfit," right? Because it's not about what she wears, it's about who she is. But it's so hard to do, and so we have to retrain ourselves to recognize people and their potential early and feed it in ways that only we can.
Our society is predicated on these kind of external compliments. We see it and then we say it. it's much harder and much more insightful to comment on somebody's insides, spirit, personality, intelligence, honor, integrity. But boy, you got a nice haircut. It's just an easier, faster, and the dopamine hit is it's not as rewarding, but it's more available probably in that format. But I agree. I think that thinking caps would be in rule of the day here.
Say that I think what you said was really important in that um, by saying, nice haircut. I mean, it's also actually a very important part of setting up a relationship, even if it's a short one, which is I'd like to know more about you. I
Yeah.
see you. And I mean, it's so even though it's not such an important thing, it's still a valuable connection. And while you were, mentioning all these different aspects of people, I was thinking about what happens when I look at a Zoom screen, especially when it's a group of people that I already know and we'll be discussing some topic. I like to fly airplanes, and we have a group of pilots that meet, and you kind of know like what so and so is going to bring up, and so this person might talk longer, and this person will point to their plane. And if you look for the things you know are going to happen, that's what you're going to see.
Yes.
But if you I mean, and it really takes a lot more work to look at the screen and really try to think, I wonder if that person's doing as well as they were. They're kind of quiet tonight. And ask them different questions. Otherwise, they can't be anybody else than you've already decided who they are.
Well, we have a lot of taboo topics too. I mean, think about even how hesitant we are to ask about somebody's health. I'm not talking about how are you. I'm talking about you don't look well. Is everything okay? That's a
Mhm.
hard place to get into. But I'm with you. If you could have the patience to warm that up a little bit and get there and
Mhm.
actually show interest and care about somebody, it changes the whole relationship.
And it can even be, the part of the reason you're curious is that somebody in your life has health issues that you're trying to figure out how can I be there for
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Um, your background, where did you go to school? How did this whole thing, this space career launch?
Um, well, I think it started with my mom and her IBM Selectric typewriter, because my mom went to work, later in her life, and became an executive secretary who took, also did a lot of part-time work at home. And so she got to have a typewriter at home, and she typed my college applications, for
Oh,
which I will always be grateful, because you know me, I was on my way out the door, not quite done, and all those kinds of things. But I jokingly say that, but in order to go to college, do almost anything, you have to apply, and it may be on a computer now, but you have to find a way to tell somebody who you are and why they should pick you. And so I managed to do that for college. And my mom, because she was typing them, said, "You are applying to MIT." I'm like, I am not going to some nerd school, mom. And the guys in my physics class were determined that they were going to go there. And it was really clear that it never occurred to them that I might go. And I really don't want to go, but I applied just to show them. And my mom made me get on a train from Washington, D.C., go up to Boston, get off, find the subway, and go and visit that school. And sure enough, I found people just like me. So that's a long way to say that I think there's a lot of things that go into getting somewhere. There's a lot of people that catalyze you along the
and,
way. And
and what school was this?
this was the Massachusetts Institute of Technology
Heard
in
of it.
Boston, MIT.
Heard of it.
Actually, I'm on the alumni magazine cover this month.
Wee.
Very excited about that. I mean, partly because I love the fact that I got to work at NASA, but I think that the lessons that I learned there are really helpful to people in all sorts of different ways. And so having part of my book be excerpted in the magazine and people get to know me. Plus it's well, I don't know, when it's your community, it's just neat to be featured and feel proud.
A lot of the lessons are outlined in the book, and you go into them in depth. When you speak to, say, corporate audiences, do you find that they attach themselves to lessons that aren't necessarily business oriented, or is there a translation for them from your NASA experience, your space exploration, to the business world? What's your experience with the audiences?
I think I think that they get right away. I mean, first, I sort of take them to space and they're like, oh, this is cool. And I show our crew, and it's really clear just from any of the pictures that we're all really different from each other. And
Yeah.
here we do this thing. And actually, one of my space shuttle missions was quite a dangerous ascent, and that we had two very critical things go wrong. And both of them ended up working out fine. I mean, I'm here today. And yet it was definitely a partnership of the people on the space shuttle, the people on the ground, and the people that for so many years designed each of those systems and kept saying, how can we make them more excellent? And then I make this point to that, like everyone here works, either with this company, for this company, but you have a mission together, and it's why you're sitting here. And in my world, the key to the mission is that all of us understand that the team is very big, and in understanding what other people do and always trying to figure out what else do they do that I can help them bring, and also being really candid about what you bring to the mission, because they might not notice. I mean, I'll say in particular for women, sometimes it's stereotyped what they people think you bring to the mission, and I'm a little mad and I'm a little insulted if I actually have to go. I actually have a PhD in that. So I was appointed to actually the repair mission for Columbia, and for how do we make sure we know how to fix things. And I was really excited about being part of that. And the person who appointed me said, well, the problem, the mission I'm giving you is that we have an astronaut who is so technically savvy, and they are the representative to that team.
Yeah.
But the problem is he's not great at blending with the team and getting his message across. So I need you to be the person that makes sure his message gets across.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, you need me to be the translator." And he said, yes. I said, so I will be that. But I'm assuming I'm also being assigned because the problem that the team is addressing is something that I got my doctorate in. And they went, of course, of course that's true.
Yeah.
And they were my boss, right? But I mean, so you can be mad. And actually, at the time I was like, this happens, but it's about the mission. I'm on that team. I am translating for that person, and I am doing what with skills that I can do to help everybody. In this case, can I tell you a story about cake?
Sure.
Is that on this particular team, it was so many disciplines involved, and how do you put a patch on a space shuttle, on the bottom of a space shuttle? And, because the tiles are kind of crumbly, and we put this kind of like super caulk with a big giant, Home Depot on steroids caulk gun, and spacewalkers would be out there doing this. There's so many aspects to that problem. And after a while, people focused on their aspect and forgot about sort of the big picture. And the big picture is that it's a hard problem. And so I have a neighbor who's a cake baker. She baked a giant sheet cake. She made me a bucket of stucco colored frosting. I brought every spatula, knife, and weird tool out of my kitchen drawers, and everyone had to damage their cake and then frost it.
Oh, wow.
And it's hard to do. And granted, I'm looking at a room full of people who probably haven't frosted a lot of cakes, right? And I might have frosted a few more.
Yeah.
But it's, you get that perfect layer, and then you go, just this little touch up, and then the whole thing peels up. And so it was about a hard conversation. Okay, we're making a lot of good progress, but we can't stop asking questions about what don't we know.
Yeah, this perceived role thing keeps coming up, and it's so relevant to what's happening in society today. I'm sure you were tracking the Blue Origin mission where they sent a bunch of women into space. They took a hit on it from the media. Well, there were a couple of messages. One was, "Isn't it great we sent a bunch of women into space so we represented women well?" And the other voices said, "This is a terrible thing. They all went with full makeup, and it seemed like a glamour trip. And what did they learn?" Where did you land on this? Because the perception was radically different.
Here's what I'd like people to take home from that, and which is that listen carefully, especially when the story seems easy. I know that in my world, in the world of space, whenever I actually know sort of more about the situation, what you hear in the media is going to be all the little pieces.
Yeah.
Might be true, they might not. But the way they're put together, people are doing, I think, the best they can. But they also have conflicting things with ratings and all that kind of stuff. But listen carefully. I mean, an example before we get to the women's launch is the stranded astronauts.
Yes.
Sunny, Butch Wilmore stranded up there. I mean, the actual story is that, first of all, the spacecraft stayed up there because that was the best place to test that spacecraft because they'd done their best to test it on the ground. And then things happened that were unexpected on the way up. And so clearly we can't test it well enough on the ground, but in space, that's where it wasn't working. That's where we need to test it. So that's why they were up there, right? For longer. And then think of it this way. Myself and almost every other space station astronaut is going for 6 months, five, maybe six, maybe longer. That's the standard tour. Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore volunteered to go for 8 days. And I would say it's a sacrifice, but actually, as astronauts, our mission is to serve whatever is the best purpose. And the best purpose was, okay, new spacecraft. Let's test it out on the way up. Let's bring it home really quickly. And then we'll take out all that heavy testing equipment and we'll stock it for a big, long mission, put astronauts on there and get it to work right away,
Yeah.
not wait a long time, right?
Let's flesh this out for people that may not be familiar. Some astronauts went up on a mission. It was supposed to be a short-term thing. It ended up being extended quite a long time. Do you remember how long they actually stayed up?
A little over 8 months, I believe.
8 months, and it was supposed to be
Right.
8 days.
Exactly.
And then the media made a thing of it because, what are they eating and how are they feeling and how are they doing? And all of the reports came back that they were happy to be up there, happy to serve, just what you said.
And not just like, yes, ma'am, happy to serve, ma'am, but I mean, it is hard. And I really I admire Butch for speaking up about that. Like, it is hard this year to be missing my daughter's senior year of high school when we thought, I would be there. But this is my job and here I am. And
Yeah.
so it is saying, yes, ma'am, but also just getting, I mean, for them, the space station was so much more productive. These two experienced several missions under their uh, belts or whatever we say. And so that's a case where, the ending was like a really happy ending in that so much, I mean, it's like your to-do list at your house. I mean, having two extra trained people, they decimated the to-do list on the space station that had been there for years. So there's all sorts of outcomes. And well, you were going to say something, Michael.
Well, what did they eat? What did they eat for the extra 7 months? Do they have enough food to last that long?
Well, no, we think all the time at NASA, even though I'm retired, right? But of like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if the next supply ship doesn't make it up? What if something is wrong with the ship that people went up in and they can't come home? What is the first thing they're going to run out of? Is it going to be oxygen? Is it going to be water? Is it going to be food? Is it going to be power? All those things are monitored and then adjustments made. And so that's why actually, we pick our food like, I don't know, a year and a half before we go to space.
Oh,
And I said, and then it eventually makes its way up there. But they send things up really early, and there's a lot of food. And actually, a friend of mine was up there during that time when Sunny and Butch were up there, and he said that the thing that really ran out pretty quickly was everybody says about how much coffee they drink, and then everybody drinks probably more than that up there apparently.
okay.
And so the coffee supply was already kind of like, just enough to be doing what you brought up for your mission. And then two extra people who also drink coffee came up, right?
Uh,
So they said, hey, we are digging into the next cruise coffee, and you'd better put more on the next supply ship because you can't stop us.
so they're resupplied with whatever they need. It's the ultimate DoorDash, I suppose.
Well, and so they're saying we're getting into something that you were counting on in a few months. And so the next time you send stuff, you need to know that we're actually affecting all those little calculations that you do. We're always very, careful to fess
Yeah.
up if we're getting into something or mess something up or, all those kinds of things.
Okay, so you were saying that when we consume the media, which we have to do, whether it's a podcaster or mainstream, we're getting information that's been generated by somebody, often the people that want us to have a certain kind of information. And you say we need to read between the lines, we need to read very carefully. What didn't we read about the Blue Origin trip that you were hinting at a minute ago? Can you talk about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was there and I had been waiting for this launch. I mean, I knew that Blue Origin was working on having a launch that was all women. And I mean, we've been talking about representation a little bit throughout the whole podcast that, um, for example, when I met Sally Ride in college, it changed my whole life, where I just thought, wow, I mean, she seems kind of like me, and maybe I could try to do that. It really made that difference. And so by having women on a launch that garners a lot of publicity, it's a way of reaching a gazillion girls. And yet if you send up people that nobody's ever heard of, you're gonna spend just as much money on that rocket and the resources and all those things, but you're not gonna reach as many. And I liked that Blue Origin was being very strategic about this. They brought up women who were quite, famous, right?
Yes.
Gayle King from
Let- Let's run down the list. Lauren Sanchez, I don't know all of them. Katy Perry from the pop world.
Exactly, exactly. And Lauren and I mean, and but they also and though but they brought up not just like people that were famous, but people that were very qualified in their worlds.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to like, me speaking. Part of there's a tradition in NASA and the government of sharing the story, just the facts, ma'am, right? And so there, Gayle King is a journalist who knows how to see what's important and how to translate it. Kerianne Flynn is actually a filmmaker that has made extraordinary films about women and about just all the kinds of things that we need to really understand happen and how we each can work on it. So stories they brought storytellers. They brought and they're can be each. Right? Everyone can be more than one thing, right? There's a really interesting aerospace engineer, Aisha Bowe, who is growing STEM engineers in a way that no one else can, and inspiring the next generation. There's a woman named Amanda Nguyen, who is a pioneer in speaking up about women's healthcare. She herself attacked in college and finding out that rape kits are only valid for 6 months. And to keep the evidence alive, how to do that, how to make sure that they know that, I mean, so
Sorry, they're only valid post-rape, post-incident for 6 months?
6 months, and there's a complicated equation associated, but if you don't, if you remain anonymous, I don't have all of these facts, but basically there's some conditions that will make it so that the rape kit stays valid to be used for future prosecution. But in most cases, they are not usable after 6 months, and there's a really big backlog on actually.
Yeah, I've heard this, that they even get submitted in time, but because of the wheels of justice turn slowly, they might not be
Exactly.
accessed. Savvy attorneys, defense attorneys know this and they try to time it out even. I mean, shameful,
Exactly. And so
shameful.
one person spoke up, Amanda Nguyen, and she was an astrophysicist at Harvard,
Yeah.
and it took most of her life for a few years to actually deal with that crisis, really. And so anyway, so she went to Congress. She had a law change. She had the law changed about how these matters need to be dealt with. So these are some of the people that are on this spaceship. And first of all, to only hear about Gayle King and Katy Perry, who both of which I admired, I was at this launch. I attended. And each of these people said compelling, interesting things that I was really excited about being able to hear. And those were not the things that you heard on the news. You heard their sort of most superficial of statements, right? And you also heard like an FAA person who's the head of the FAA make a point of saying, by the way, officially you are not considered astronauts.
Hmm.
And it was pointed out to him, that person didn't feel the need to say that a couple months earlier, or to missions that were either all guys or only one woman on there. It was and so it was a little bit like we want to keep you in a box. Society kind of wants to keep people in a box. And so coming back to what you can learn from this is I don't know why the media turned out that way. Was it inexperience? Was it a poor job of doing of what the media received from them? I was there. I was at the press conference. I was so excited to know that so many people, the question I got, I wasn't listening to the press, I was there experiencing, and then I did commentary from the Blue Origin launch site. And I got asked a lot, oh, so many little girls are going to be so excited about Katy Perry. And the first thing I said, well, that's 50% of the population. But what about the other 50% of the population that are going, wow, maybe I might know somebody like that too. Maybe my girlfriend, wife, sister, or the woman next door could be that person who is breaking a barrier like this.
Yeah,
So,
it begs the question, Katie. We used to talk like this about newspapers, but now you can do it with magazines. Pretty sure pretty soon magazines won't be as relevant either. Book titles, anything you're shopping, TikTok reels, that people have like a purient interest in, like the lowest common denominator. They're interested in what they can see. They're not really interested in learning as much as they are experiencing something. And it begs the question, well, back in the day, they said, well, do newspapers run headlines that they feel the public would be interested in, or does the public buy and teach the newspapers what to put in their papers?
mhm.
And I think there was some of that going on with this mission, because certainly the weight and the depth and breadth of the messaging had little to do with the value of the program. It was more about the sheen.
Exactly. And but I think, I mean, I'm an optimist, and I mean, I think you have to work with where, I mean, wherever you are, that's where
Yeah,
you are, where you start from. And actually, Butch even said that up on orbit, if you want to start me from stranded, if you want to start me from stuck, you can do that. This is where I'm starting from, but then I'm going to go, what can I do while I'm here?
yeah.
And, even, I helped with the Gravity movie. I ended up, talking some with Sandra Bullock, and our crew advised her. And then the Gravity movie comes out, and there's a lot of like things in physics that are really wrong about it, but it was getting a lot of PR, and I was allowed, since I'd been working on it, to do PR for NASA for that movie. And so I said, okay, it's going to be really famous. What can we, since we have the spotlight a little bit because of them,
Right.
what can we tell people about what we really do in space?
Hmm.
And so trying to figure out what are the things you really can do with this. And I think what people can do is look for different, listen a lot. If you're going to listen and you realize you're making some judgments as you listen, um, listen to more. Listen to stations you don't usually listen to. Listen to people. This is why I like podcasts. I like to learn more about the people, the human part. And I think that's what people are really after. So listen more, learn about the people, and realize that what you saw in the headline was probably not the whole story. Think about what the story could be. Think
Yeah.
about what you would ask them. Kristin Fisher is the daughter of Anna Fisher, one of the first 6 women astronauts. And
Oh,
she has a really cool YouTube podcast. And several of us got together. She invited us, and we talked that we were at the launch or had opinions. And go and listen to what Kristin, whose mom is an astronaut, what did Kristin think? And because it's not all cut and dried for any of us. So
yeah.
listen and learn. And that's why I think people like your podcast too. I
That's
know
a
I do.
good little slogan. If you're going to listen, listen more. If you're going to listen, listen a lot. Don't just stop listening because you hear what you wanted to hear. That'd be good advice on almost every frame of life. Recently, there was a development. I saw it. I'm following you on social. Cady Coleman, everybody. CadyColeman.com. Her book is Sharing Space. It's excellent. Her keynote is excellent. Uh-oh, here it comes again. And I this thing that came up people are talking about it. You're talking about it. It's called a Letter of Dissent. Can you explain what this is and why it's so important at this time?
It's an actual legal thing at NASA that when you see something that is unsafe or not being done in a way that is harmful to the mission, if you have taken this up your chain as you should, and you still don't get those results, then you can bring it to the NASA administrator.
Hmm.
And it's called a letter of dissent. And a group of people, former employees of NASA and also current NASA employees, signed this letter with their names in public, about 180 people. And then a few hundred more signed without using their names. And the reason that there's more people like that didn't sign their names is really the whole point of the letter, is that two things. One, the president's budget is wants to cut about 25% of NASA, which is it's a huge number, but also the way the cuts are being made in terms of when you add in, there's the budget, but then there's also the way personnel have been cut in terms of the way federal employees are being cut in every part of the government. But what we found, if you ignore all those things and just look at this as a regular sort of like time and space, when an accident happens in space or anywhere, we try to learn from that. And at NASA, we really do, I think, a great job of learning and having to admit some big mistakes. So we learn things. But about after 20 years in a natural cycle, a lot of the people who weren't here when that happened are now in charge of making decisions and having to figure out things are never safe in space, but are they as safe as we can make them? Have we really done our jobs? And we tend to have an accident about every 20 years. And it's because we have a group of people working at NASA who probably didn't experience that or don't have the skills to, or experience one of the two, to have these hard conversations about have we made things safe enough? And so we are in that position now. And now you're going to add in taking away the new, young, very informed folks working at NASA who were cut right off the bat. And then you're also cutting a lot of experienced people. So the workforce at NASA is slimmer and not in a strategic way, which is what, I mean, you can make things slimmer, but you need to be strategic and keep the skills that you need on board. And when you combine that with the atmosphere of not speaking up, of being afraid to sign a letter of dissent when it's very clear that our missions are being compromised, that safety is being compromised, that attitude, that sort of atmosphere of not being able to say when you think something isn't right, it's part of the life's blood of NASA. Every Monday morning in the astronaut meeting that I would go to when I worked there, if you made a mistake in terms of doing an experiment, in terms of flying an airplane, forgetting something, you talk about those mistakes. We talk about our mistakes, not just astronauts. That's a culture at NASA. And if you don't feel comfortable reporting, you can do it anonymously, but safety is paramount. And safety and mission success are being threatened at NASA right now.
I think if budget cuts continue, you will probably see more letters of dissent coming from other industries, other representatives. We're in an extraordinary time right now where government seems to be being reinvented for better or worse, and these changes are going to be impactful. I think people should speak out and be heard.
And realize that their voices are important. I mean, there's not so many people that signed that letter of dissent, but what was important about it was having the world understand
Yeah.
that it was necessary. And so the fact that, I mean, there's not that many voices. I am one of them. And that's generated more press that has got people thinking and asking. And I mean, there are improvements to the way the government handles things that are necessary. There's improvements in personnel that could, the way we staff things in every agency, but not just as using a blunt instrument to cut numbers, because you just can't turn on like a faucet. You can't turn things off and then suddenly start up. I mean, who wants to be operated on in the hospital where everybody there is either new or hasn't done a lot of this work in a long time?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Hmm.
And who wants to climb in that rocket and be someone who has both the privilege and the responsibility of going to space and exploring for everyone.
Well, we began our conversation today talking about how nobody does anything alone, that we're all in this together. I think the context at the beginning was, if you're a team, you're working with the team. But the truth is, we also have all these teams working together. And that's really how life is supposed to go. It's okay even to have competitive teams, but the idea of all of us sharing space and sharing ideas and sharing experiences is it would elevate things for everybody. You're a great example of this. Your message is great. You've had a storied career. I'm so happy you get a chance to share it now with others.
Well, thank you very much. And I think the positive part, I mean, those groups when they exchange information, I tell people I think, and this is not about drinking, but um, have an event that brings people together and magic will happen. People will meet each other that never would have met. And, it's not something you might, be, I mean, it doesn't take much to catalyze change, but every one of us has the ability to add something to the situation that catalyzes things to happen differently in the future. And it is a tough environment right now in terms of what we read in the media and what's happening in the government. And I mean, there's good, it's not black or white. So talk about it. Talk about it with people you don't usually talk about it with. Talk about it in town, talk about it at the curb, talk about it on the bus, and exchange some different viewpoints.
Well, like you, I'm an optimist. I think things are going to work out fine. We'll get through this. It's Cady Coleman, everybody. CadyColeman.com is her website. She's got a terrific keynote if you're a meeting planner or need a good speaker for what your upcoming event. And of course, her book, Sharing Space, is terrific. Cady, what a pleasure to visit with you again. I'm so glad we're buddies.
Me too. And I loved when we met, and I love that we've stayed in touch and keep exchanging kind of advice and messages. And I'm always learning stuff from you, Michael. So
Oh,
thank you.
likewise. What a nice thing to say. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon, okay?
See you later.